Did you know that the reason a lot of independent musicians are feeling burnt out about the music business right now isn't because they're not working hard enough? You know, a lot of musicians out there, you've got jobs you're working 9 to 5 and trying to figure out how to fit music in also into your schedule. Some of y'all have side hustles that you're relentlessly working to stay afloat and again trying to figure out how to fit music into this equation. So the problem isn't that we're not working hard enough. I would say, yes, there are some musicians out there that could get a little fire lit under their butt and stop being so lazy. But I know a lot of you out there, you guys are working pretty hard. So, we've always been told growing up, hey, if you just keep working hard, if you just keep working hard, the good things will come your way. And some of you that have been on this channel know this story, so I'll tell a condensed version of it, which is if you were thrown into the middle of the Amazon, right? And you didn't know where you were and you were trying to find civilization and you had a big knife in front of you that you could use to cut through the forest. What's the first thing that you would do? Well, a lot of people go, I don't know, I'd pick a direction and just start cutting, right? The counterintuitive answer, that's the correct answer, is you should climb a tree. Why? So that you can get a vantage point, so that you can see where you need to put your focus, where you need to put your hard work. So a lot of musicians out there, we've got this feeling of burnout because there's a lot of vantage points we haven't looked at. We're kind of, okay, I'm going to just start cutting through the forest and I hope I find civilization one day. That's not likely to happen. And there's a few people, sure, that end up cutting in the right direction and they start working, and to get to the results they're looking for in their music business. But most musicians, and I'm sure you can attest to this, drop this in the comments if you've ever felt like this, but you're sitting there and you feel like you're working hard and it just doesn't feel like you're making any progress. And so hard work is not the problem. So we need to look at what are some of the things that are actually causing musicians to feel burnt out. I think it's not because of the hard work issue. I think it's actually because of three different forces. And in this video today, I'm going to be talking to you about those three things that are causing burnout for musicians all over the world and how we can fix that. Okay, so let's get locked in. The very first thing that we need to understand is that the internal game is most important to this. So what's going on between your ears? A lot of musicians have mindset issues about a lot of different things, right? We have fear. That's a big issue. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. There's the fear of judgment. There's the fear of rejection. There's the fear of fear itself, as Alan Watts talks about. That's a philosopher you guys should look up. He's really, really great. So the fear of judgment. We don't want to put content out there because we're scared that people will say, oh, look at that musician trying so hard for people to like his music. Well, if his music was good enough, it would just be good enough. You wouldn't have to market it. None of that's true, by the way, but we have that fear that people will have that judgment on us, and so we don't do anything. Or maybe we have this fear of going and playing on stage because we're going to go out there and we're going to perform our music and maybe we make a mistake here or there and we're scared people are going to judge us. We're scared they're going to sit there and go, oh, he made a mistake. There's that fear. But like I mentioned also, there's the fear of rejection. There's the fear of I put my music out there and people genuinely don't like it. Guess what? Of every single successful musician that has ever existed, there are plenty of people who hate them. But does that matter really? Because they found their core audience. They found the people who resonate with them. So who's laughing then? Like, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, but I'm pretty sure she's having the last laugh on that discussion. So here's what we need to look at. We have this fear of, judgment. We have the fear of rejection. But then what's the fear of fear itself? To me, this one in the modern age has become more prevalent of a problem. And that is, we are scared to put ourselves in a position where we might feel fear. So this ends up being a very deadly cycle where we're afraid of being afraid of fear, of being afraid of being afraid of fear, and it just turns into this terrible cycle. So we start sitting there avoiding risk, avoiding things that we need to do that, yes, are difficult, yes, will require us to kind of stick our necks out there a little bit, but we avoid it because we don't want to feel the fear. That's a deadly thing that will pretty much ruin your music career because it will cause permanent inaction. We don't want that. We want action that's, being taken on good knowledge and we can actually use some good strategies and move forward, right? We don't want to sit there and just go, oh, what if, but maybe, I don't know. And what if they do this and this? And then we're not just like, okay, I'm doing this, but I have this deep fear of rejection, or I'm doing this and I have this fear of judgment. Fear itself will cause you to completely be paralyzed. And I think a lot of musicians are in that position. So we have to audit what's going on between our ears. We have to get rid of some of these fears, some of these anxieties that we have. And we have to look at what does our mindset look like about success, okay? So for example, a lot of musicians have myths around what it means to be successful, what it's required to do to be successful. And there's myths that have built around it like, oh, well, if you want to be successful, you have to sell out. And I've talked about this in depth in my book, The Musician's Dilemma. Hey, a little plug. But the idea is people get these thoughts and ideas about, well, if you want to be successful, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, and you can't just do it this way. There's a lot of that I see out there. Like people will drop comments where they go, if you ever want to be successful, you have to be signed. I'm like, there are plenty of unsigned successful people out there. And especially in today's age, people remnant from the old music business that we look to as legacy artists, sure, they're signed. But if you look at the up-and-comers who are making waves now, they don't have to be signed to be successful. And that's a great thing that we should be optimistic about. But so many musicians have these myths rocking around in their head, just, confusing and distracting them, and frankly, holding them back. So we have to get rid of those myths. We have to start, throwing them away and start figuring out, okay, what does it really mean to succeed? Now, for some of you, success is not just money. Success is fulfillment. There's, the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. There's a specific set of systems and mechanisms and frameworks and things that we can do to generate success. But that doesn't always mean that we're going to be fulfilled, right? So we have to really identify that art of fulfillment because, success is a science, fulfillment is an art. And we have to, as musicians, we know how to handle the artistic domain. So that should make you a little bit more confident, hopefully. But you get this different angle on it where, okay, I have to figure out success has systems, and the, other side of this, the fulfillment, you have to look at why you're doing what you're doing. He who has a strong enough why can bear any how. I believe that's Friedrich Nietzsche. And so you have to look at what are the reasons that you got into this business? What are the reasons that you started creating music? I know for 90% of musicians out there, they didn't get into this business just to make money. They got into this business for other reasons. So you need to identify those reasons and balance them with what is required. What are the marketing strategies, the selling strategies, the business infrastructure that you need to do to actually see some success? We'll talk a little bit about that later in this episode, but you have to identify what success means for you and not have these myths floating around in your head, okay? The next thing is probability, or you could think about it like belief. A lot of people have an apprehension on the inside of their minds to go for it, to actually go all in on their music business, because there's this thing in the back of their head they've been told a billion times from families, friends, counselors, whoever, that have like, that music, it's not really probable you're going to make any money, not very many musicians make very much money. I hate it when people say this stuff because it's programming defeatist mindsets before anyone's taken any action to verify or disprove those claims. It's preemptively setting you up the wrong way. I had a client who pointed out something very, very brilliant in my opinion, which was where people say, oh man, today's going to be easy. And then a bunch of people jump on him and say, no, don't jinx it. You're going to jinx it. Now it's going to be terrible. It's like, who's putting more emotional impact into the room? The people that are going like, hey, I think something good's going to happen. Or the 12 people that were like, no. And then all of a sudden things end up bad and they blame the one positive person when they were self-fulfilling their own prophecy. That's kind of how it works a little bit. So we have to look at probability and belief. Nothing in this world has put it this way, and I don't mean to throw shade at anybody's profession, but nothing that truly makes a long-standing difference in this world is going to be oh, 80% of people who get into this succeed. That's just not true for any domain. I can't think of a single domain that is like impactful across the world where that's the case. You look at wonderful, I'll just say like restaurants. 90+% of restaurants don't make it. You look at basketball players. 90% of basketball players don't make it all the way to the pros. You know, look at football or any other sport. 90% of the people that play those sports don't make it all the way to the professional leagues. Okay? Now, a couple questions need to be asked there. Does it mean that if you don't get all the way to the super mega successful end of the spectrum that you don't have success? No. There's plenty of people, let's use the sports analogy, who are in the minor leagues and making a decent living, or do it in some other private leagues or something as a fun hobby. There's different levels to those kind of things. The same thing is true with music. So we can't have this, oh, the probability that I'll become Beyonce is 0.01, so therefore I shouldn't go for any of the other levels that I could possibly obtain where I'm making $50,000 a year from my music, $60,000, $100,000 a year from my music, and not just your music from royalties, but like your ticket sales, your merch sales, all that kind of stuff put together. I'm going to call that your music, right? So we can't be thinking, oh, because the probability is so low that I'm going to be in the 1% of musicians or the 0.1% of musicians, that therefore it's not worth it for me to go for it. That's just not true. And so I hate it when people say, oh, I'm trying to be a musician, not much money in that, is there? Because they assume that if you're not Beyonce, you're homeless. And that's just not an accurate dichotomy of what's going on. There's little gradations, there's things along the way that you can get to, and you can reverse engineer and strive for. And to be told, oh yeah, you're not going to do that is BS, okay? So obviously I'm very passionate about it. I hate it when people say that. So you have to identify for yourself, okay, what is that for me? Like, am I going to be a $60,000 a year musician? Or am I going to be a $100,000 a year musician or $1 million a year musician? To me, I don't think I'm anybody to tell you which of those you should strive for. But you have to identify based on what you want. In the previous thing we talked about, your success, based on what you want, what success means for you, that will determine the parameters of what you realistically need to strive for. Because some people think, I want to make $1 million+ a year. And that's cool if you have those visions and stuff. But is that realistically what you need to be successful? Not necessarily. Heck, I think if most musicians made $40,000 a year or $30,000 a year from their music, they would be ecstatic, right? Because musicians, people are like, oh, if you're not making X amount of dollars, I don't know how you're surviving. Musicians, we find a way. I don't know. It's something about us. We're resourceful individuals. We figure out, I can hop on a couch here. I can, DoorDash here. I can do, we're creative. We figure out how to live below the poverty line pretty well. Unfortunately, I think it's sad that we've built up these skill sets because we felt so, I don't want to say unfranchised, but we've been so disempowered that we feel that that's the domain that we need to master, as opposed to start learning how to master business things that could actually move us to the goals that we want to get to. And for musicians that have those big goals, that's totally fine. And for musicians that only want to make like the average median income from your music-related income, that's great too. But don't ever be diminished in your mind. Don't ever knock it down and say, I'm not going to go all in, because the probability that don't do that game. Okay? Please don't do that. And the next thing we need to talk about is your mindset around money. Money and asking for money. This is a huge spot with musicians that needs to be addressed, which I can't obviously do an entire video on it right now, but we need to look at what are your beliefs about money that are holding you back. Do you have this belief that to ask for money is kind of a weird, sleazy thing to do? Well, let me ask you a question. When it comes to you buying something, because here's what you need to look at. You need to stop looking at things from the perspective of a seller, and you need to look at things from the perspective of a buyer, okay? Think about it like this, because you're worried the buyers are going to have a certain reaction to you because you're selling to them, okay? So think about it from the buyer's perspective. If you walk into a restaurant that's selling you food, do you get mad when they recommend the specials? And let's say you took one of the specials and it's delicious. Are you mad that you had to pay them $65 for the steak and the shrimp, or the shrimp and the lobster and the steak or whatever? Maybe you got the three, I don't know. Whatever it is, right? You go in there, you get the special, my mouth's watering now because I haven't had lunch yet. But go through that and you'll identify like, oh no, I don't mind that at all. In fact, I walk out of there, if it's really good, I walk out of there like, that was incredible. That's the best meal I've ever had. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I got super Italian at the end there. Oh my gosh. But identify that if you were buying something at a show. Have you ever been to a concert and you go to the merch table and you're super pumped up from an act that you just saw? Maybe it was an opening act. Maybe it was the headliner. I don't know. But you go and you saw someone and now you're over at the merch table and you're super excited and you get that shirt and you have those feelings that are running through you, that excitement, that, okay, I've got this, I can take this home and I've got a little piece of this night that I can take home with me forever. That is the emotion that you're letting people have when you sell them things. See, we're so caught up in the fear of rejection and the fear of judgment that we don't understand that when you provide something of value and you sell it to that person and they buy it, that's one of the best things you can do for them. Because they're just like, now they're elated with emotion and they're just super over, they're head over heels, so to speak. They're in love with whatever just happened. And they have memories that last lifetimes. I can still remember different moments that have happened in my concert history. Before I became a touring musician, I actually remember like my first concert seeing Alter Bridge in the trees in Dallas, Texas. And some of the memories associated with those things last a lifetime. So yeah, the $30 tour t-shirt was well worth the price. And I would happily pay it 2 or 3 times over if it meant I could have the same experience again. Because that's what we're really giving people. So whenever you're selling something related to your music, you're selling a live experience, you're selling an offer that's kind of an experiential thing, whatever, you're providing value to people. And so don't have any weird qualms about like, well, if I start earning too much money, oh my God, there's always this thing called charity. Where if you ever feel like you're earning too much, people are just giving you too much money, you're providing such value to the world that people can't stop giving you money, there's this beautiful thing called charity. So if you really do feel like you're making too much money, you can give it away to people that you feel deserve it better. But ultimately, when you provide value, people will happily exchange their money. I'll tell you something right now. You can say what you want about Amazon and Jeff Bezos. I don't think he's a perfect saint or anything like that, but his business that he's created serves my life greatly. I remember being a kid and ordering products off the internet when the internet was dial-up. Some of y'all have no idea what that means. Those that do remember the spaceship crash sounds that would come out of your computer before you could actually get onto the internet. That was your initiation before you could actually get the goodies. And then you'd go order something online and it would take like 8 weeks minimum. Just like, hey, listen, you just ordered this off the internet. Come back to me in a few months if it doesn't show up. That's how long that time horizon was. Now, Amazon comes over and they create this distribution network where if I order a book that I want, it's going to be here today or tomorrow. Max, it'll get here in 2 days. Like, that's an insane value add to my life and everyone else's life. So guess what? I'm happy to pay the Amazon Prime membership so that I can get access to those benefits. So when you provide enough value to the world, people will want to give you money. So don't have a weird mindset about asking for it. So let's go on to the next part of this that's really important. I've talked about all the internal things. Let's talk about the external. The external is like your environment. Okay, let's start there. I have strategically throughout my house things set up that are psychological triggers for me to help me be more productive, to be more positive, to be more, loving and things of that nature, because your subconscious mind is so powerful. Most people discount it and they don't obviously recognize their subconscious because it's subconscious. If you knew your subconscious, it wouldn't be subconscious, would it? It'd be conscious. So we don't typically think about it because of that nature of it, but it's absorbing information all the time. So for example, I'm looking at my camera, but my brain is simultaneously taking in all the data that my eyes can see in the room. I'm just not focusing on all that data, because if I did, I'd probably just be like, paralyzed with how much information would be hitting my brain at once, right? So you have to look at it like your subconscious is just taking in information. And it's so powerful that Darren Brown, who's like a hypnotist, mentalist type of magician, he's really, really interesting. he demonstrated that if he put someone in a car and sent them on a particular route that had the number, like say, for example, 13 on the way, a bunch of different times where it's like hikers with 13 on their back running, or not hikers, but like joggers or soccer players doing like conditioning that have that number. It's a number that's on a bunch of signs, and they're not even really paying attention to it. They're not pointing it out. It's just subconsciously registering in the back of their mind. And then they go into a basketball court, and he asks, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld, think of any number, and he's like 13. And Darren just gets this immediate smile because he's like, it worked, right? He just found out that he was able to subconsciously influence Jerry Seinfeld by putting the number 13 in strategic places where he wasn't going to be consciously recognizing it. It was going to be subconscious information, but that subconscious information came out and influenced his conscious decision making. Sorry if I'm using a lot of psychological language here today, but hopefully you're getting the idea of why your environment is so powerful. So I will put things throughout my house. For example, there's a book that sits in my hallway called Managing Oneself by Peter F. Drucker. It's a very small, great book. I recommend you get it. And one of the things that it reminds me of are the principles of that book. So one of those principles is people often think they know what they're good at, and they're often wrong. And people think they know what they're bad at, and they're often wrong. The thing that really decides what you're good at and what you're bad at is getting actual feedback, right? So, and he's talking in a business context, right? So I see that book, and I can recall that. I can have that information readily available back here. And it's very useful to me. Managing oneself, just that name, managing oneself, reminds me to manage myself, right? So you have these psychological triggers that you could set up through your office, through your house, to help make your environment better. Now, this also means that if you're in an environment that's not supportive, you're in a bad environment, you have to do your best to change what you can change about your environment if you're stuck there. But if you can have some mobility, get out of that bad environment, okay? Because even if we're starting to develop new habits that are going to make you more successful, if you are around a bunch of people that want to keep you at this lower position in life, they are going to be a hindrance to your progress because they are going to have an environmental impact. And that kind of also goes in to the second thing in this that I need to talk about is your friends/inner circle. Due to the way that human personality works, it works very much like osmosis, right? So if we are around a bunch of people that are committing crimes, you may think, I'm not a person who would commit crimes. But if all your friends are, and that's all you hang around all the time, the likelihood drastically increases. They've done this in schools where they've shown that they've thought, oh, we have a bunch of, kids who are misbehaving. Let's put one of the good students in there to be a good influence on the bad kids. And the reverse happens, where the bad kids immediately have a worse influence on the good student. So that's just kind of the way our personalities are wired as human beings, is to be the sum total of who we surround ourselves with. So you have to choose that extremely carefully. And some people don't understand that. That means sometimes separating from people who are family, are friends. If they're trying to hold you down and make you less than, and there is literally dysfunctional enough environments that if you start to you start to clean up your room, people will be like, what, you think you're better than us just because you got a clean room? What, you Mr. Clean, whatever? That's how dysfunctional some environments can be. So if you're in one of those environments, one, I pray for you because that's a terrible thing. But you've got to do your best to either separate from that environment or change what you can change so that it has a positive impact on your life, okay? Now, number 3 in this, the info input is what I would probably call it. Your informational input. So what are you consuming? TV, movies, scrolling on social media, music, all this kind of stuff. What are you consuming? Okay? So if you're constantly consuming, I don't want to hate on people's, hobbies or anything. I'm just going to make a personal opinion, okay? I think watching horror movies all the time, it's like the only genre of a movie that you like. I think that that's probably not the best thing to be filling your mind image and video-wise with, right? Again, I'm not saying I don't like horror movies. I've got my fair share of favorites. I like Cabin in the Woods. That's a fun one. My wife didn't like it very much. I was like, hey, it's kind of part comedy. She's like, this is not funny. It's like, okay. But like, here's the idea. What is going to be floating around in your head? And is that useful to you? That's really the question you should be asking yourself. Is this useful to me? Is it useful to have gory images in my head? And that's kind of what I think about with music too. Some of I'm a metal guy. I like metal music. But there's certain genres of metal where I'll hear the lyrics and I'm just like, I don't want that ringing around in my head. You hear lyrics from very intense metal bands like Infant Annihilator, and you're just like, I don't want that ringing around in my subconscious all the time. I would rather fill my subconscious with messages that inspire me, messages that inspire me to be a better person, to be more introspective, and all these different things. I don't want that kind of stuff floating around in my head, right? So I'm very protective of the information that I consume on that sense. Now, the one that's the most dangerous and easy to fall prey to, and that I even fall prey to myself, is the social media scrolling. Because that stuff is given to you algorithmically, where in those other contexts, you kind of have to seek it out. In this context, it's given to you. And so sometimes you can't control what's given to you. You can do your best to filter and over time filter out things. But sometimes you can't control that. So what do you do to put that into your favor? I make sure that anytime I come across information I do not want to consume, I immediately block the content creator. Immediately. I've got a huge block list because I'm trying to sift and sort my feed so that it's only feeding me stuff that's feeding my mind, my heart, my soul, my spirituality, things of that nature, okay? So you have to just really take an audit to the info that you're consuming and make sure that it's best serving you and best serving you on a subconscious level, right? Because the conscious mind can discern context. The subconscious mind cannot. And the subconscious mind affects a lot of emotional responses. And so that's why it's important that you really treat your subconscious well with some of the things that I've been suggesting here. So 3, this is the final thing I want to chat about with you today, which is how to avoid burnout, right? It's funny, we started with burnout and I went into these deep psychological things. And so you may be asking yourself, how does this really correlate? The idea here is that a lot of us are feeling exhaustion mentally, not because the work we need to do is really that backbone crushing. It's because we've got these other things in our head that are simultaneously beating us up while we're trying to do the things that we need to do. I guarantee you that if you just were able to, with total 100% peace of mind, edit a piece of content or get it in the studio and write something or create a video for your website or a marketing funnel or whatever, like if you could just do that with total confidence, total certainty, I guarantee the feeling of burnout would start to go away. Because a lot of the feeling of burnout is actually the feeling of overwhelm. That's really the issue. We're burnt out because we're overwhelmed by all these emotions and thoughts that are being, invading into our lives and distracting us. So that's why I've spent a lot of time talking about these sort of deeper psychological things, is because that's what's really impacting us. Think about it like this. People make this joke all the time, which is, you quit your 9 to 5 to become an entrepreneur so that you can work 24 hours a day for yourself. And it's kind of a funny joke to say like, we're so busy all the time. But here's the idea. I would 1,000,000,000% rather work for myself for 12 to 15 hours, doing things that genuinely excite me, build curiosity in my life and build excitement and passion and purpose, than to work 8 hours at a place that is soul-sucking. You understand? Like, when it comes down to it, we have to really identify how we're going to avoid overwhelm and move forward in our business. And so this is kind of the last thing I want to talk about to really get back on point, is systems. Systems help prevent overwhelm, because now you're not relying on what's going on up here to do what needs to be done. You're just executing, okay? So there's a great book. It's been a while since I've read it. I really need to read it again because it's a great one. It's called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And one of the key things, the key insights that I always preach on in this book is he talks about how your brain has limited capacity. And what I mean by capacity, think about your brain like a stage. There's only so many musicians that can get on the stage before someone's got to get kicked off the stage. Think of like your memory and things that your to-do list like that. And every musician is a to-do, right? So you're trying to fit too many things that you have to do and remember all these things. Again, that will start to cause a bit of exhaustion, and then the emotional stuff comes in and starts overwhelming us, and it really just defeats us after that. So when you have a system to take the stuff that would normally cloud your mind and put them in their nice compartmentalized little box, and then within this context, I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this context, I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you just go through a system, it takes away a lot of the anxiety. I mean, if you look at a lot of McDonald's workers, they don't seem to be very stressed out if you pay attention to most of them. The ones especially working the drive-through window, every single McDonald's I go through, they look so chill. Why? Because they're just operating a system. They don't have to really worry about, okay, I got to make sure that the message that I just typed in here showed up on the computer in there for the kitchen. They don't have to know that because there's a system for that. It's optimized. So the less things you have to mentally worry about at one time and hold in your brain, or else it all falls apart, and the more you can get it onto a system, something written down or in your notes or something. I'd recommend things like Evernote or using your Apple Notes if you don't want to pay for a service like that. Just get the system out of your head onto a piece of paper or onto something digitally, okay? So what are the systems that we can start to implement that are going to give us a little bit of more peace of mind, okay? In my opinion, the 3 most important systems outside of songwriting, because obviously you have to have the best songs possible or else none of this matters, right? But again, just do the best that you can with songwriting because that's all you can really be asked to do. But your marketing systems, that's the first thing. You need to have systems of getting people to come to you and getting systems of going out and reaching out to people. So the 2 terms that you have is inbound and outbound, okay? So on the marketing strategy of outbound, for example, this could be very simply done as DMing potential fans or new followers that are going to become potential diehard fans. That's a way that you can, there's systems that you can develop to reach out to people methodically, right? This is stuff that I go through with my clients all the time. How do you methodically track this stuff and create systems around DMing fans or emailing your fans? Now, funny enough, like a lot of content marketing is kind of creating inbound marketing where you're getting people to reach out to you. They're going to go to your link in bio. They're going to go to your website and buy your offer, right? That's what you're looking for on the content front. The content marketing and the systems that you build around creating your content are designed to drive people inbound, and then you DM fans to get more people into your business, your music business. That's your outbound side of your marketing, right? I could keep going for like 4 hours on that stuff, but that's the general things that you need to know, is that content should be designed to get people to come to you and to want to join your mailing list, to want to go to your website and all that kind of good stuff. And then your DMing is how you reach out to get more people to be like, oh, cool, I didn't know about you, but now I do. Please don't spam people. I need to make a little side note here. For the love of God, please stop spamming people with your Spotify link. This is the most ineffective, crappy piece of marketing. I don't know who recommended it. I don't know who started it and thinks that it's a good idea, but stop it. Please, from this moment, if you've done this, I forgive you. Everyone forgives you. But from this moment on, never spam somebody's comments or videos talking about how awesome you are with a link to your music. That's a surefire way for me to block you and hate you forever, just so you know. But when I say reaching out to people, reach out to build a genuine connection. Don't send them a spam message that you want to optimize that you can just copy and paste and not have to build a genuine human connection. No, reach out, go to their profile, see if there's something cool that, like, oh, hey, you got a cool guitar. Hey, that's a cute dog or whatever. Connect on a human level, for God's sakes. So there's things that we can do in that front. Now, the other side of this that people don't really talk about that I think is extremely important is the selling systems. You have to have a sales process. Like I said, people don't like to talk about this because they want to talk about the songwriting. And like I said, you got to talk about the songwriting and get that, all taken care of. But this is a music business channel. So we got to talk about the selling. We have to talk about how businesses stay alive, and that's revenue. Guess what? Your favorite restaurant that we mentioned earlier that gives you that delicious, succulent meal, if they don't have any revenue, they ain't staying in business. And neither will you if you don't have any revenue. So let's talk about selling things. The selling systems need to be, how do I take these people that I have received through my inbound and outbound marketing and immediately convert them into a supporter, someone who is paid money on their credit card, out of their wallet to help us. Because literally, if someone bought like a $67 offer from you and you gave them a couple shirts or a shirt and a poster and a whatever, if they paid $67, that's like 22,000 streams in that one transaction. Okay? Now, people may say, they may have this defeated mindset that I've talked about earlier where they're like, oh, I don't know anybody that would pay $60 or $67 for my stuff. Don't have that attitude, because it's not true. I literally was one of those people where I was charging $25 for my t-shirts, and then I went on tour way back in the day, 2015, with Saving Abel. And they go, hey, you're undercutting our prices. We charge $30 for shirts, you're charging $25. That's not cool. You need to raise your prices. And at first I was like, this is strange. I've never had this happen before, but okay, we're forced to, might as well do it. We rose our prices to $30 and we were like, this is great. This is going to kill our merch sales. No one's going to want to buy a shirt for $30. And guess what happened? Nothing changed. Not a single person stopped buying because, oh, it's $30 now. We were still making the same consistent average number of sales every night. It did not impact that whatsoever. Now, that started to get me to think, wow, how many things are we doing where we think people won't pay for them, but they actually will? So we created a VIP ticket at our local shows. And the first time we did it, our band was like, oh, I don't know if we should do this. I'm so worried that we're not big enough to justify a VIP. We had 7 people buy this $70, $65 VIP ticket the first time we tried it. That immediately hopefully blew, like I knew it for me, it blew the past misconceptions of, okay, this is reassuring that literally all we need to do is just start offering things. And the people who can afford it, if it's a good enough offer, will take it, right? And our VIP offer rocks. You know, it's like you get to see the sound check, you get a private VIP acoustic performance, there's a Q&A, there's a meet and greet, you get early access to merch, there's parking, you get preferential parking. Like, we really go above and beyond so that people are like, yeah, I'll spend the extra money to have all these extra benefits. Heck yeah. I'm already spending $10, $15, $20 on a ticket. Might as well spend an extra $60 and get all this bonus stuff if I really like the artist. And so we need to stop putting limits on ourselves and figure out, okay, what are the offers that I can put together to take all these new people that have come into my world from my content and my DMs and all this stuff and drive them into my email list so that I can start selling them things systematically. And that's an important thing, getting them into your email list. Now, sometimes there's this little intermediary where, you know, maybe you got a Facebook group that you drive people to from the DMs. Maybe you've got like an Instagram broadcast channel, or what I think is really cool nowadays, Jesse Cannon was talking about it, is the Instagram close friends. Utilizing that, I thought that was a cool additional little take on this. But having some sort of intermediary free thing that you drive them to, that's usually on the app they're taking, that you're communicating with them, can't speak English, that you're communicating with them on, and you start to figure out, okay, you're on Facebook, I message you on Facebook, join this Facebook group. Oh, you're on Instagram? Cool. Here, you're in my close friends list, or you're in my broadcast channel now. So it's something easy for them to get into, and then from there, since you've kind of sifted through who's actually into you and who's not, you can now drive them into the email list from there. Really cool additional part of this. But now once they're in the email list, you have to have a way to present your offers. And in my opinion, you want to capitalize on the fact that you have this person's email and actually use that to your advantage to communicate with them in such a way that builds rapport, builds trust. Because if you just immediately go in swinging, trying to get the sale, it takes a certain fan to take that offer. And because a lot of us are starting out from the beginning, the percentage of your fan base that would be willing to take that offer makes the offer ineffective, because if you structured it differently, more people would be willing to take it. So how do you structure it differently? Well, without going into extraneous extra super spontaneous detail right now. I'll just say this. You go from introducing them, welcome them, set the expectation for the list so that they know what to expect from you. Communicate your story, all the ups and downs that you've gone through, so that they're like, whoa, I'm on their side. And now that they're on your side and they know what you've been through and you've related it to their life story and you've been really connective in that sort of way, now we go to sell something. Now we go to actually make an offer. And we still do it in a way that's like strategic and very, some salesman tactics and techniques are used, right? But it's done tastefully. And the whole idea is you're driving people from content into group, into email, into offer. That's a sales process. Taking them through a certain set of steps before they get the offer. And then understanding, like, are you going to do any order bumps on the offer? Are you going to have an upsell? Any kind of things like that, right? Those are more in-depth things with the sales process. But that's the very, very baseline floor of it, getting people into the sales system. And then the last systems that you'll probably need are your business infrastructure. So these are things like, your taxes. I know everyone gets, oh no, taxes, but taxes are great. If you understand everything that you can actually deduct as a musician once you become incorporated in some kind of fashion, you have some kind of LLC or some sole proprietorship or, any other kind of entity like that. I wouldn't recommend the S Corp and the C Corp for most musicians. We're just not there, most of us. LLCs and sole proprietorships are probably the best way to go about it. But from there, you can start to deduct things for your business. I knew a guy named Aaron who worked at Guitar Center, but he set it up where he's a salesperson, but he got it set up that him becoming an employee, he was not a W-2 wage earner. He was a 1099 contractor through his sole proprietorship. And so everything that came in income-wise was considered income for his business, and then everything he purchased that was music-related was considered an expense. And so he writes off picks, strings, straps, all this kind of stuff, because that's a ordinary expense for a musician, and therefore, under the IRS code, is something that you can deduct. Now, how much of it you can deduct varies, but hopefully that got you a little bit excited to learn more about taxes. You maybe have been leaving money on the table every year to reduce what you have to pay in taxes, or in fact, get some taxes back. And the reason you're able to do that is because you're offsetting the earned income that's on paper with the expenses, right? So that's a really great thing there. And I'm just going to say this, a lot of musicians cannot report income because if it falls under $600 in cash, you don't necessarily have to report that. So if you're getting paid a guarantee of $400, $300 every night, that's not necessarily something you have to put on your taxes because the IRS has said that it's $600 and over. So just a little side note there. Again, there's tons of stuff. I could go down a huge rabbit hole when it comes to taxes, but that's one side of business infrastructure. There's like, how do I set up my business so that I can actually delegate work to people, hire people to do other things, start building my team, which a team for me, I think of things like, how can I find an engineer that is going to be able to consistently record the music at a high quality? That's a good team member to have. Who is someone that can help me manage social media? Who is someone that can, and then when I say manage social media, the more administrative parts of social media, not the posting itself. I do think that needs to come from you. The things that are going to help you execute more, booking, or like merchandise managers, tour managers, when you're out there playing shows, those things can be beneficial to you. If you're just staying at home, you don't need a huge team, really. If you're just doing everything from home, you're not a touring artist necessarily, then the team becomes a lot smaller. To be honest with you, you can be a lot more lean and mean with your business. But this will hopefully reduce your overwhelm, because once you start building a system, you're not thinking about, what do I do next? What do I do next? I have to remember what to do next and I have to hold all this stuff in my brain, which causes me anxiety. No, you're not doing that. You're just following the system that's been written out, right? So when it comes to my merch table, nowadays, I can run it effortlessly because I've ran it like 1,000 times. But if I hand that responsibility to someone who's never been behind my booth before, I have a document that I send to them so they can read it and they can fundamentally do anything that I do behind that table because I've written it out for them, right? Oh, if you want to do this, it's going to be found here. It's going to be found here. This is the passcode to get into the iPad so that you can get access to the POS system. Here's the password for the POS system and blah, 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 blah. Here's, if you have any issues, here's how you troubleshoot it. Here's the things that I do to troubleshoot it. Make sure that this is this and this and this. I write every possible thing out. So when I have a new merchandise manager, I hand them this document, they read it over before the show, and by the time the show is going, they're usually freaking like 80 to 90% there, and then that last 20 to 10% is earned through experience, and then they've got it, right? So having a system can help streamline your processes so that you don't feel overwhelmed to do them. And before I go, one little thing I would say is learn what to cut out. To me, if you're not focused, if you're neglecting your marketing to focus on something, if you're neglecting your selling to focus on something, if you're neglecting your songwriting to focus on something, that something probably isn't worth it, in my opinion, right? So if you're worried about some contest where, Busta Rhymes is going to do one session with you over creating content that's going to find you your ideal fans, that's not a good decision. If you're focusing on the next battle of the bands, or maybe this new Instagram grid that you can create, or maybe you're thinking about some kind of like boost post thing that you can if it's not focusing on attracting fans through the content that you create, whether through the content that you create or you're reaching out to them, I would say it's probably not worth it. If it's not focusing on how do I turn this traffic that I've acquired from my marketing into people who actually support me, I would say you probably shouldn't be focusing on it unless it's that, right? So focus on those things. Focus on your marketing, focus on your selling, focus on your songwriting, obviously, and how to run your business. All the additional things, like making my website look perfect, your website could always look more perfect. That will be a never-ending cycle. Make the decision to say it's good enough, it's functional enough. Does it serve the purpose of marketing, selling, songwriting, etc., etc. So hopefully you guys got a ton of value from today's video and feel a little bit more confident about what to address to help make your life a little bit better in this music business, so you don't have as much overwhelm, you don't have any burnout, you actually just feel confident while you're going out there and executing on some systems. So if you'd like some one-on-one help in your music business, implementing these systems, there's a link in the description to apply for a coaching call to see if it's a good fit to work together. Otherwise, click the subscribe button, notification bell, all that good YouTube-y stuff to see more videos like this. And I look forward to seeing you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.